Thanks for tuning into my channel. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Today we are talking about conformation in the dressage horse. So it's important to consider that there's the conformation of the horse, and then there's also function. So there's form and function. Sometimes you'll find a horse with perfect conformation and you'll see how it moves and how it uses itself, and it's really not that good of a dressage horse. And sometimes you'll see a horse that conformationally isn't perfect, but it's actually a really good dressage horse. I can think of a few examples, like if you think of some of Isabel Worth's horses, like Gold, for example. She doesn't have perfect conformation, and yet she's winning at the Grand Prix international levels. So that's kind of the caveat, is that there's certain things you look for in conformation, but just because your horse has perfect conformation or has bad conformation doesn't ensure that they're going to either be a good or a bad dressage horse. So this is Harvey. This is my horse. He's 7 this year. And we're going to look at 2 horses today. We're going to look at Harvey and another horse that I have, Don Carlos. So when you're looking for a dressage horse, one of the most important things to consider is that you want the horse to be uphill. So how do you tell if they're uphill? Basically what you do is you look at the point of their croup and their withers, and you want the withers higher than their croup. So hopefully he stands here. So his withers are right here, like where the mane starts, and this is the point of his croup, basically the highest point of his butt. So you want his withers to be higher than his croup, which it is. And most horses, this isn't the case. Most horses are built downhill, which means that their croup is higher than their withers, especially quarter horses. Thoroughbreds tend to be downhill and warm bloods, they're bred to be uphill. So that's the first thing you look for. Now, the second thing that you look for when you're looking for a dressage horse is I look at the angles of their hind legs. Yes, you're fine. So when I'm talking about the angles of their hind legs, what I look for is from the top of their croup to the point of their tail, so this line, and then from the point of their tail to the stifle. So I kind of draw 2 imaginary lines. You're okay. So from the point of the croup to the tail, and then from the tail down to the stifle. And if you look at, ideally, you want it to be a 90-degree angle, with this line going 45 degrees down and then another 45 degrees across, so that this angle here is 90 degrees. So Harvey has a little bit of a flat croup. Like you can see that from the point of the top of his croup to his tail it could be more sloped downward. And this angle is really important for collection, because if your horse has good angles on the hind leg, they're able to rotate that pelvis under, which allows them to sit and engage the hind legs for the collected work. So for the pirouettes, for the piaffe, for everything like that. So if you have a horse that's built downhill, but they have good angles on the hind leg, they're going to be able to actually lower their croup and lift in the withers. So the horses, there's a thing called a thoracic sling muscle. The horse's shoulders are not attached to their withers. So the horses can actually pop their withers up between their shoulder blades, as well as that they can lower their croup down. So even if your horse is built downhill, like even if they stand downhill, you can get them to be uphill if they have good angles on the hind leg. So that's kind of the second thing that I look for in a dressage horse. Then the other thing that's really important to consider for a dressage horse is the overall shape of them. If you look at Harvey, a lot of people would say that he's a long horse, right? He's got a long back, he's got a long neck. The second horse we're going to look at is much more of a square-shaped horse with a short neck and a short back. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. So if you have a horse that is long in the back, like Harvey, it's going to be easier for him to do the bending work. So like the half passes where they have to bend in their body, and also anything extended, because he's a longer horse, so it's easier for him to extend. If you have a shorter horse, it's going to be easier for them to collect and engage. So that's kind of the two sides of it. And that's where you see, you know, you'd like something kind of in the middle. You want a horse that's not too long and not too short, but kind of in the middle, so that you get the advantages of both those things. Okay, so then the third thing that is really important when you're looking for a dressage horse is the straightness of the legs. Okay, so when I'm looking for a dressage horses, one of the hardest things is that they have to stay sound and healthy for a long period of time. It takes a long time to train a horse to Grand Prix, and it's a lot of wear and tear because horses aren't really designed to go in small circles and do lateral work. That's not something that they do in nature. So one thing that's really important to consider is the leg conformation of a horse. You want your horse to have straight legs, and you want them to have good feet. So when I'm talking about straight legs, there should be like a pillar of support that goes from the shoulder right down through the middle of the foot. So some horses are going to have crooked legs. And same thing with the hind leg, where they're either going to have be a little bow-legged or knock-kneed, or you're going to see that the pastern joint here doesn't go into the middle of the hoof. It goes a little to the inside of the hoof or the outside of the hoof. So any crookednesses in the legs are going to cause more wear and tear, which means that your horse may not stay sound. So again, this isn't always the case. You'll see horses with really crooked legs that are sound amazingly, but if you're looking for a young horse, if you're looking at a young horse and they have crooked legs, it's probably not a good thing to invest a lot of time and energy into, because the likelihood that they will go lame is higher. And then as far as what I look for with the feet is basically you want big feet. Bigger feet are better than small feet. And you want to make sure that there's no cracks, no quarter cracks, nothing like that in the feet. So that's Harvey. I'm going to show you a second horse now to compare. So this is the second horse that I'm going to show you. This is Don Carlos, and he's like a completely different type than Harvey. So they are both very good dressage horses, and it just goes to show you that there's a lot of variation in dressage horses as far as which horses make it to the top. So there's not a stamp of what is the perfect conformation. It's more about how they use themselves, and then how you as a trainer kind of modify your training plan and are able to educate the horse to use their body to do what we want them to do in dressage. So when you look at Don Carlos compared to Harvey, the first thing that you notice is that Don Carlos is much more of a square-shaped horse, whereas Harvey is a rectangular-shaped horse. So compared to Harvey, Don Carlos is going to have a much easier time with the collected work. So like the pirouettes, the piaffe, anything where he has to shorten his body and lower his croup is going to be more natural for him. Likewise, anything with more extension or anything that he would have to bend in the body for, like the half passes and the haunches in, is a little harder just because he doesn't have as much space in his body to bend. So if you look at like the distance between his shoulder and his stifle, that distance in his back, or between his withers and his croup, that distance is much shorter than on Harvey. The other thing that's interesting about Don Carlos is he's actually built just slightly downhill. So if you look at the height of his withers compared to the height of his croup up here, you can see that that line slopes a bit downward. Now, that's not a great thing when you're looking for a dressage horse. However, what Don Carlos does have is he has really good angles on his hind leg, better than Harvey. So if you look at this angle from the point of the croup to his tail, so this line, and then from the point of his bile down to his stifle, he has a nice 90-degree angle there. And that means that for him, it's going to be easier to kind of fold his hind legs under and lift in the withers, so that when you're riding him, it is possible to get him uphill, even though when he stands, he's a bit more downhill. Now, the other really nice quality that Don Carlos has is he has this beautiful neck. So if you look at Don Carlos, he almost just standing here is on the bit. He has this nice neck that comes really up out of the shoulder. It has a nice round shape to it. And again, this is a really good quality in a dressage horse, because you can tell that getting a horse like him round and on the bit is going to be very easy. It's not something that you're going to have to like fight him on just because of how he's built, his conformation. The last thing to note about Don Carlos is that one thing I'm looking for when I look for a dressage horse is how long the hind leg is compared to how long the front leg is. So Don Carlos has a longer hind leg than front leg. Like if you just look at how high up his stifle is compared to where his elbow is, you can see that his stifle is higher than his elbow. Levi, come here. Get out of the video. Come here. Go. In an ideal world, you want to look for a horse that has a little bit of a longer front leg to get that nice shoulder freedom that you want to see in the extended trot and in all the dressage movements. It's not the end of the world, like I said, that he has a longer hind leg, because he has good angles on his hind end, so he's able to lower that hind end and lift the front end. But that's something to consider when you're looking for a dressage horse, is that ideally the hind legs are a bit shorter so that they can organize their hind legs under them, and the front legs are longer so that they get that nice shoulder freedom and the front leg coming up. So these are just some things to think about, and it's important to understand how conformation impacts which movements are hard and easy for your horse. Just because your horse doesn't have perfect conformation doesn't mean that you should give up on them or find another horse. It just simply means that you need to know, like, if your horse is built downhill, okay, I need to work on getting my horse uphill. If my horse is long in the body, you need to work on more collecting movements. So it's important to consider how conformation is going to affect the training of your horse. And then certainly if you're looking to buy a horse, understanding what you want and what you don't want, and then once you get the horse, how you're going to kind of adapt your training to help the horse with the conformation that they have. So I hope this is helpful. Thank you guys for watching. And if you like my videos, sign up for my email list for more content. Thanks for watching.